welcome to another edition of Voice of the Diaspora. In studio with me today is opposition member of Parliament, Sherod Duncan, a very hard-working, very hard-working member of Parliament. He juggles so much, but he has the energy and the zeal to carry through. And he'll be joining me now to discuss issues, political issues affecting Guyana. Mr. Sherod Duncan, welcome to Voice of the Diaspora.
The great Norman Brown.
Not at all.
As a voice of the diaspora from your end.
So tell us a little about yourself before we plunge into the program.
Well, Norman, as you said, I'm Sherod Avery Duncan. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm an ardent supporter and a member of the APNU AFC coalition. I am from the AFC, but we have become so accustomed to working as one unit. I don't even know if there's a differentiation anymore. But I am a graduate of the University of Guyana. I have worked for the government, APNU AFC, in several capacities. It was my tremendous privilege in helping the government in any way that I could. And now I serve as a member of Parliament for the APNU AFC coalition.
Wonderful. And I understand that you are also a deputy mayor, and you are a director on the board of directors of the Guyana National Newspapers Limited. So you have a wide experience in different fields and capacity. And as I usually say on my program, Guyana needs younger, vibrant politicians like yourself to take the helm and to carry this struggle, thus ensuring that the country returns to what it should be. Let us go straight into the program. Can the People's Progressive Party government be trusted?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And we don't even have to judge them by our own standards, Norman. We can judge them by their own standards. They came into office making a whole host of promises. They promised the joint services they were going to give them a month's bonus. Well, the joint services are still waiting for that. They made some promises to teachers. The teachers are still waiting for that. They made promises to the old age pension folks about raising pension to 40,000 Guyana dollars. Those folks are still waiting for that. They promised to give back pay and bonuses to the public servants. We see how that went. As a matter of fact, they have fired over 1,000 public servants since taking office. They promised to do good in the health sector. Well, we see the ravages of COVID. At our end here, we had 21 COVID deaths and 474 COVID cases when this fraudulent administration took office on August 2nd. To date, we have over 7,000 cases of COVID-19 and we have 177 deaths. I mean, to a place like from where you are, they might seem very small, but we have a very small population. So by comparison, right, it is an enormous amount of deaths, an enormous amount of COVID-19 positive cases. And over just a short period of time since this new administration is in office. So no, they cannot be trusted. And one of the reasons why, Norman, we had the People's Parliament just this afternoon is because of that. They went to the home of these Henry boys, Isaiah and Joel Henry, who were murdered so brutally at the Cotton Tree Back Dam in Region 5 in our country here, and promised them justice. And everything that we know currently tells us that justice is not being done in the interest of the murdered Henry boys. So no, they cannot be trusted.
Yeah, wonderful. Now the PPP seem to have a very robust PR machinery. They had it while they were out of office, while they were in opposition, and they're utilizing that very robust PR machinery. I know that you're involved in PR for the coalition, for the opposition, and you are doing a tremendous job yourself, Christopher Jones, who is the chief whip in Parliament, and Andrew Weeks and a number of others. What is happening on the ground in Guyana? it is my understanding. I've spoken to countless people, and I'm getting this recurring kind of point that people feel that the People's Progressive Party prosperity, will bring prosperity to Guyana. Many people, as you know, and as we know, are supporting the PPP that have never supported the PPP before, and they're coming out publicly. We see the situation with the COVID-19 that the PPP has been giving out what you call a grant, and the narrative behind that is that, I mean, if you're giving people cash, handing out cash, people may feel that you're handling the COVID-19 situation in a proper way. What do you have to say to the Guyanese people in relation to that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Not only have we seen the spread of COVID unmitigated under the People's Progressive Party, but we have seen the deaths associated with COVID-19 increase tremendously. But don't take my word for it. Starbuck News, Norman, as you know, is one
Yeah.
of the more fair and balanced newspapers in our country. Independent, even though we would like to think that they've been showing a more leaning to the government of recent. This is Starbuck News editorial just this morning, and the title of which is Eligibility. And I'll just read the first paragraph. It probably looks good on paper, but the government of Guyana's 25,000 COVID-19 relief and household support grant, much like its handling of the transmission of the infection and other aspects of the pandemic to date, is far from even-handed and shamefully steeped in politics. And this is not a coalition newspaper, as I've said, Norman. And
That's the
that
Starbuck
alone,
News.
the framework of that kind of discussion and engagement and the question which you just asked. So absolutely not. They are not dealing fairly with the COVID-19 grant distribution. As a matter of fact, we are inundated every day with people who have concerns, because it seems as though when this grant is sharing in those communities that favor the PPP, there are no questions asked. You go to people and you give them 25,000 individually. When you come to areas that favor Avenue AFC, they are only given 25,000 per household, and then now they are given the 25,000 to only the owners of the property. So we see a whole host of changing criteria for this small grant, because from where you are, Norman, $25,000 is negligible. This is not 25,000 US. It's 110 US dollars.
So they are playing politics. They are playing politics. It's important to note that in this era, that the COVID-19 pandemic is causing problems to government. If you look at how the Republican Party fell, primarily it was because of Donald Trump's handling of or the mishandling of the pandemic in the US. And here in the UK, this government is threatened in relation to how it's dealing with the pandemic, and many of its supporters are saying that Boris Johnson may not go back into office. It's important for people to understand that with the way the way governments handle this pandemic, it can be a determining factor on whether they have the right to be in office. And I'm happy that you have made that point. Let us talk a bit about what is happening in terms of opposition politicians being targeted, and black professionals being targeted. Tell the diaspora and those at home what is really happening, because it doesn't look nice, it doesn't sound nice, and people are beginning to raise their heads to think that the PPP government is carrying the stripes of the same old government they were in the past.
Norman, well, let's start from the point where just before he became president, albeit fraudulently, Mr. Ali told us that there will be no witch hunting under his administration. They were going to deal with people as professionals. That is what they said. However, we have seen something totally different. since they have taken the reins of power, right? Which is what you are speaking about. This witch hunting of black civil servants, and even at the local government level. So we've seen over 1,000 Afro Guyanese terminated. They said that the political appointees would have been terminated, but you can have in a small country like ours, by comparison to where you are, and a small workforce like ours, 1,000 political appointees, right? So we saw the wanton firing of thousands of Guyanese, and up to today it continues. Persons were messaging me that people in the Forestry Commission were terminated just today, right? And we see them in comparison going after our what is our activists, political activists, where is our political leadership, where is former government ministers going after them. And in comparison, we see that the Attorney General, who had fraud charges, credible fraud charges, um, before his name, the Chief Justice said that that matter should be tried before the court, had his charges dropped by the DPP. Incidentally, he's East Indian. We saw the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission had private criminal charges brought against her. The DPP dropped those charges when the DPP took office. Incidentally, she's East Indian. We saw Ashley Singh, former finance minister, now still current finance minister on this administration, had charges against him. Those charges were dropped by the DPP. Incidentally, he's East India, Winston Brasington. Even the president had 19 fraud charges against his name. They were all dropped. Incidentally, they're East Indians. Valda Lawrence had charges instituted against her. She's Afro Guyanese. Christopher Jones, Carol Joseph, David Patterson, right, Van West Charles, and a host of others. The CEO from Jacob, Mr. Lowenfield, Mr. Mako, Myers, Miss Duncan, a host of others. Incidentally, they're all Afro Guyanese. I mean, nobody wants to talk about race. Race is like what they say is the third rail in politics. But the facts are the facts. And that is where we are, Norman.
The facts are the facts. Okay, when we look at what is happening, as you will recall, the past PPP governments were full fledged dictatorships, and
Correct.
you know, we saw manifestations very early when they got into office, especially under Mr. Jaglio's rule and carrying over to Mr. Donald Ramatar's rule. We saw certain indicators very early, which would have warned us that this is going to get out of hand, so to speak. The PPP's attempt, this government's attempt to want to control the Guyana police force very early with placing in different positions people that they favor and removing senior police officers who under the coalition government would have done a tremendous job for all to see in fighting crime and and restoring that sort of confidence in the society. One of the things most people will say is that the coalition government, one of the greatest things that they have done is to make people feel free and safe again. They can, they could have come out and speak out against the coalition without
Yeah.
fear of reprisal or victimization or anything. When you look at what is happening, do you think that we're fastly going back into a dictatorship? The government is fastly going back into a
Absolutely.
dictatorship?
Absolutely, Norman. And that is what we've been saying. The PPP seems hell bent on taking us back to pre 2015, that dismal period in our nation's history that President Granger likes to call the Troubles. Want to take us back, where young men, young black men were killed and went missing with impunity. There was the death squad, there was Roger Khan, there was everything that was bad. The drug barons had free reign. Um, again, we saw the literal ethnicizing of the public service, where Afro-Guyanese were replaced, not given any serious posting. You had Roger Luncheon, the then head of presidential secretariat, is saying that there weren't any Afro-Guyanese eligible to become ambassadors. So we saw that, and that is where it seems as though they want to take us back, sadly. And we can look at instance after instance where you see that policy demonstrated and practiced.
Wonderful. Let us delve quickly into something that many Guyanese, many ordinary Guyanese are not fully aware of how it works and how it operates and so on. Our parliament, our national assembly, you know, I think yourself and younger politicians like Christopher Jones and others can take the parliament to the people and to give the people an understanding in layman terms what is happening, because it is the National Assembly that determines what legislation goes out there for people to benefit, for the ordinary man to benefit, and that it must be brought to them in a simple way where they can understand what happened in the 17th Parliament sitting, the 17th sitting of the 12th Parliament, and the 16th sitting of the 12th Parliament, and so that they can have this feeling that, you know what, we know what is happening, and you know, we can relate to it because it's in a language that we can understand. You would have today's Parliament, which is, I think, was the 17th sitting.
Yes.
You would have been seen as a troublemaker, firebrand, in Parliament, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But you have leveled some charges against the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Speaker of the National Mansour, the Honorable Mansour Nadir, and he seemed to be have been very perturbed by those charges. Tell us a little about what it's all about and how it came about.
Great. Now, the experience with the APNU AFC government, we chose a politically neutral person in Dr. Bertrand Scotland to be our speaker. He was neither PPP, he was neither APNU AFC. He was a scholar in certain areas of the law, well respected, Dr. Bertrand Scotland. And so that is the standard that we use, fair and unbiased and extremely qualified. Now, Mr. Nadir um, came from a small party called the TUF that has disintegrated over the years because he has become totally subsumed by the PPP. My experience personally with Mr. Nadir as a youngster, I remember in 97 when you had the unrest because of the rigging of that election in favor of Mrs. Jagan. I remember clearly being high up on Regent Street. This was close towards the botanical gardens. If they got person who understand the landscape there in Georgetown. When we met Mr. Nadir, who said to us that he was showing solidarity with our struggle, and we weren't going to let them win and get into government by this rig elections and all of that. Mr. Nadir shook my hand as a youngster in those days. I shook my hands. And within a week, Mr. Nadir was the minister in the PPP government. The same man that pledged solidarity to fight them. And he's been reposed there for the longest while. Mr. Nadir was outside of Pegasus when the PPPC, attempted to overturn a government vehicle, right? Protested vehemently against our government. Not one tear gas was fired. Not one pellet under the AFC government. And we saw the treatment of this same government, for instance, with the success squatters. People just looking for a piece of land to live, a shelter over their heads. In most cases, they were women, single parents. They were shot at by tear gas and pellets, unheard of in 5 years under the administration of the AFC. And so this is the comparison that we have. You said it, Norman. People could could condemn the government, could criticize the government without any fear of retribution. And Norman, you have people working for the government, like Ruel Johnson, who is now an editor at Kaichor News, worked for the government and severely criticized the government for 5 years until his contract expired. Nobody went after him.
Him.
I, as a sitting parliamentarian, the speaker wanted to tell me what I can say on social media and what I cannot say.
What did you say
And
to
I
him? What did you say to
guarantee
him? What did you say to and about him that
that he's
caused?
not fair and he's being biased. If I am standing in parliament and I'm trying to quote a newspaper that said the minister promised to do X amount of studies or to do studies, period, before the opening of the sugar industry, and the speaker tells me I cannot quote from a document unless it is circulated, right? And so I cannot quote, and I have to desist. And then the Minister of Education stands up recently on the 28th and quote from numerous newspapers. And when I draw it to the speaker's attention, he finds some excuse that she can quote from all of these newspapers that have not been circulated to other members. Then it looks to me as though that is bias, right? And he's being unfair. The speaker cannot say he's impartial if last month he was at Pegasus trying to overturn a minister's vehicle. That is the facts. And so he has been partisan and biased for the last how many years since 1997 to now. He has been given this role, and certainly he wants the appearance of being fair and impartial. But it doesn't happen overnight. And you see consistently, time after time, the speaker going out of his way to benefit the PPP government through their rulings.
Okay, so this contention there in Parliament had to do with something in relation to motions and things that have to be
Correct.
tabled in terms of the marijuana bill,
Yeah.
call and also the motion that had to do with the murders of the Henry boys and Harish Singh. And the speaker is saying that the matter could not have been dealt with because it was sub judice. And you were saying that the speaker is compromised. Let us go to this clip first before I ask you to deal with it in depthly.
Close before. This was taken from a document, as I said earlier, that the Honorable Speaker Scotland used. Reference in that document was made to the Canadian House of Commons Procedure and Practice, second edition, pages 313, 314, which states, and I quote, reflections of the character or actions of the Speaker, for example, an allegation of bias, could be taken by the House as a breach of privilege and can be punished accordingly. Quote. First, the Honorable Member Sherod Duncan, after the last sitting, leveled labels at the Speaker which included words such as bias, partisan, and non-partisan Speaker. In one of the Honorable Member's social media posts, backed up with lampoons, he writes, and I quote, Mr. Speaker started out nice, like them new cook shop. And I want to caution members that I'm hearing that when the Speaker is making an announcement, we ought to give the chair the reverence of silence. You don't have to listen, but don't disturb. And then the price raise and the standard fall. I thought after the second bout of COVID, he'd stay closer to God, but the devil's got to him, bias, partisan, you name it. And that is funny.
How do you respond?
Freedom of speech, because and true to form, when the speaker took the speakership, our leadership said we will give him and accord him the respect, irrespective that he comes from the PPP, from the belly of the beast, and we did that. and treated him fairly, respected him. But we have seen a decay in that impartiality. We have seen a decay in how the speaker is ruling in the National Assembly, and we're all big people. You understand? And you understand almost instinctively when somebody's not treating you fairly. You understand when there's an uneven hand in how the rulings of the speaker is going. Look, just this morning in point, everybody could be heckling. The speaker hears me alone. You understand me? Some of the loudest heckles comes from the government section. Darlal, Kwame, Nandalal, DAG, and a host of the others, right? But he hears me alone in that whole assembly.
Let me ask you something, just for the sake of the viewers. How is the speaker selected, or elected or appointed? Does the opposition have a say in the speaker being elected? How does that process work for the sake of the viewers?
This the speaker comes from the is appointed from the um, party with the most votes, right? The majority in the house.
Okay.
It should be somebody who I think understands the laws because you got standing orders to interpret, you got the constitution, you have all of that to interpret. You want somebody who is um, fair, who is principled, who is unbiased. And that is why we chose Dr. Barton Scotland because of the man's many years with the law, his training, his pedigree, right? He doesn't come from any political party. And so we wanted somebody like that. It lists the whole quality, nature and quality of the parliament when you have a man of that character and caliber. Right? Now, Mr. Nadir, I don't know in particular what is his area of expertise, what is his training. The last I know, Mr. Nadi was a cashier or something at a store on Rob Street, right? And so Mr. Nadi's interpret. Mr. Nadi is steeped in PPP politics. And so he looks at things with a jaundiced eye. And we can be fair and admit that. I could be fair and admit that my bias is naturally going to be to coalition and even to the Alliance for Change, right? And because of the years in which you've been in politics and your education, your political education, and all of that, it impacts that. But in 6 months, Mr. Nadi wants us to believe he is suddenly a convert to impartiality and fairness.
Well, he gave he gives as good as he gets. I don't know why he's
But
complaining
he
when I
stands
look
there
at
saying,
when I look at the but he made reference to the leader of the opposition, and we'll talk briefly about the leader of his opposition and about coalition politics before we talk about your upcoming visit to Linden, and then we'll wrap up because this program has to be a balanced program. And he referred the Speaker of the National Assembly referred to the leader of the opposition as a backyard or front yard bully or something of that nature. And of course, the leader of the opposition responded, in my estimation, quite feebly. But let us have a look. If it's the right clip here.
Standing orders permit any member to sit in on any committee. Close the quote. This was taken from a document, as I said earlier, that the Honorable Speaker Scotland used. Reference in that document was made to the Canadian House of Commons procedure and practice. Standing orders permit any member to sit in on any committee, except they can't interject or vote. Thank you very much. Mr. Clerk. Presentation of petitions.
Mr. Speaker, may I presentation of your indulgence, please?
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, at this time, we will proceed with the order of business, and at the appropriate time, you can make an intervention. I'm going to stick to the rules.
I just wanted to say thank you.
Okay, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, please go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for your elucidation on the question of the standing orders and the fact that you recognize that I come from a very strong and disciplined pedigree. I think, though, however, please, Mr. Speaker, that we represent on this side of the House over 270.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you very much, Honorable
Over
Member. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. We shall proceed.
And therefore, we have a right to speak.
Honorable Member, thank you very much. We shall proceed.
Mr. Speaker, just one point. I just want to say one thing, and that is that, Mr. Speaker, that their reference to my behavior at backyard, I take strong offense to that. That I am not from a backyard and did not have a backyard.
Honorable Member.
Thank you, sir. I take my seat.
You know, I wanted to talk to you briefly about it because you are a vibrant politician. You fall in the category of a young politician of that sort of demographic that is needed in Guyana, and that was responsible after 23 years in ensuring that the PPP government was removed. It was the commitment of young and vibrant politicians like yourself. I can recall when the elections were won and they were the cleanup, and we were having the big cleanup campaign and so on. There's a very famous photo of you running with a bag. You were so elated. So thousands of Guyanese, literally thousands of Guyanese. You know, Guyana is made up of maybe 70% young people. You know, they are, and thousands of Guyanese are not very confident that the leader of the opposition that we have can take us into any sort of victory at the next general elections. Many people believe that the government, the coalition government, had lost power for a number of reasons, and that fire in the bellies of the people, in 2015 was quelled by waters of discontent, and disappointment, and so on. And it appears to be a reality, and that is why I want to hear a young politician like yourself speaking to this issue quite briefly. We're looking at a situation where during the 4 or 5 years of the coalition's rule, people became very disappointed. Not much jobs were had, and many African Guyanese were disenfranchised, were taken away from their hustle. When the curfew, when Camarade, that's from your party, your leader, when that curfew was instituted, I recall writing publicly stating that instead of having a curfew, and closing the dance halls and entertainment early, why don't the government invest in more security? Why don't they utilize and I wondered, while people were crying and hurting and the small man couldn't get a hustle, and that the government was not really listening, and at that time those of us who were activists and trying to feel the temperature on the ground would have heard from thousands of African Guyanese that, oh, this can't work, and people seem to would have been waiting to have a change. When we also look at the opposition leader, let us look at his response to the leader. It's to the speaker. It to me, there isn't that passion. There isn't that kind of robustness, for the want of a better word, that would inspire confidence in the masses. And people, and I'm really afraid that people will not be very optimistic in supporting us or the coalition at the next general elections if we don't see certain changes happening within the party, and where people are crying for youngsters like yourself and for those who have been pushed aside, the James Bonds, the Sharma Solomons, and all of these young leaders who were responsible for securing that win for the coalition. Is there any way that can to be looked at and be dealt with in the interest of the people?
Norman, I'm not going to pronounce on the internal politics in the PNC by any means. Suffice to say that I think you may not have had the benefit of the entirety of the presentation by the leader of the opposition on the floor this morning, because he did come back after the speaker was trying to nullify his submission on the floor, and made his point very, very forcefully, and he was backed up by the entire opposition in the National Assembly. And I have a tendency of feeling sometimes, and you do it from your end, you're not getting the benefit of the entire House and what we are witnessing and are part of inside of that chamber. I think that from what we saw, the leader of the opposition comported himself very well and dealt with the speaker. And as a matter of fact, it was the leader of the opposition who signaled that time up for this speaker in terms of the leeway we had given him and the goodwill we had extended to him to deal fairly with the business of the House. And so whatever you see me doing, it's not in isolation from the strategies that are being formulated and executed by the entire coalition group of members of Parliament and other persons who work behind the scenes to support us. And so I know people would like lots more to be done, but we are ensuring that we're crossing our I's and we're dotting our T's. And in the same way we have said enough with the nonsense of this speaker, we're going to up the ante where he is concerned and his crassness and his bias. And we are seeing that in lots of other instances. And I say to the folks who are watching us outside the diaspora and at home here in Guyana, that they're going to see a lot of things forthcoming from the opposition.
Yeah, but let me go back to the question directly. Let me, we have to put. I mean, you have to put your house together if you wanna, challenge someone whose house is not in order, so to speak. And these are going to be hard questions, and you are very, very outspoken, and you're very confident, and you seem very objective in how you deliberate and how you deal with issues. We have thousands of Guyanese on the ground, primarily young people, that are saying that the leader of the opposition is compromised. It is their opinion, and sometimes opinion can be seen as facts in the world of politics. It's not. It may not be true, but if they feel that way, that is what they're going to go with, and so on. And they believe, and they say that the leader of the opposition has been compromised since he was in government, and that his relationship with many powerful Indians is suspect. Is suspect. These are things that are being said by thousands of our of coalition supporters, or those who have supported the coalition in 2015, and even at the last elections. My question to you, and this is a direct question to you, when you put all of that together, are you confident of going into another elections feeling that there will be a win if Joseph Harmon, the leader of the opposition, is at the helm as the presidential candidate of Guyana?
Yes, I feel so. But I would limit my response to saying that we would have to look at what are the needs for that hour when that hour comes to us. But my experience with Joseph Harmon is that he is a fighter. And that is my personal experience. And that is what we need at this hour. We need that fighter. And, as any good leader, you have to balance the people's interests, your party's interests, the coalition interests, and chart a course forward. But I have seen a strategist in Mr. Harmon. I have seen a good leader in Mr. Harmon. I have seen a fighter in Mr. Harmon. And I think in lots of instances, sometimes it's us holding him back, saying, let us rethink this or rethink that. But I think that Joseph Harmon is a very, very strong leader. And I think that the PPP fear him. And that is why we've seen a lot of silliness that they've been trying to do here on the ground. But as I said, that we are strategizing every hour, every day, how to move forward. And we have decided that we have given these guys a fair chance to come straight and to come right. And they're doing a lot of nonsense. And now we will act in the people's interests.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I hope Mr. Harmon is listening and he's matured enough to come on this program to speak to the Guyanese people and those who are not happy with his leadership. I know
No, Norman, I can tell you this. Let me be the very first to say this. If you have invited him and he has not come as yet,
he does not respond. He does not respond. He does not respond to any message I send him.
I will try to make some interventions. I have had my program going for some time, and because of his own schedule and all of that, I was inviting him several times, and I was happy recently when he came on the show twice. So I would say, do not look at it as a slight. There are changing situations on the ground here every single day, and don't feel slighted by that in any way. I will draw it to his attention, and he's very, very responsive. I can tell you that. One of the things that I personally admire about Mr. Harmon is that he's a consensus builder. He wants to hear all of the ideas in the room, and the best ideas emerge, and he is motivated by that. Of course, in politics, sometimes a decision has to be made on the spur of the moment, and he's a leader who can make the decisions. But he's also a consensus builder. And I would say, I don't see a program that Mr. Harmon, once he has the time, he will not go on. And so I will take that invitation from you, because I look at it as an invitation to Mr. Harmon. I'm certain he's gonna find it.
And I thank you for that, Miss Valda Lawrence.
Understand that the diaspora have their role to play, and you're playing a very, very important role, which we admire, and we encourage Norman to be that voice there where you are speaking out on these issues. We know it cannot be easy, but we are thankful that you have what I say on my program, the testicular fortitude and the intellectual aptitude.
Thank you. And we're wrapping up now. So I want you, Sherod Duncan, member of parliament, to say what would you say to the people of Linden, to the people in the diaspora, to the young people out there, if they were to ask, what do you have to offer differently that can inspire our trust and confidence in the coalition to do better by us if they were given the chance again? What would they do differently this time? What can they expect? With the coalition in opposition, what can they expect in terms of them being confident enough to vote for the opposition at the next elections?
I think, Norman, the contrast plays out on an almost daily basis. Competent leadership, good leadership, responsive leadership. Look at just today. One wonders who is handling our foreign policy. where just yesterday the American embassy declared that the Guyana government would be has invited the Taiwanese to have an embassy here, an office here. And today the government has to come back and say there was a miscommunication. I mean, unheard of, unheard of. The first time Taiwan is setting up an office in this hemisphere, and you have all of this confusion. We had a very coherent foreign policy, a very coherent domestic policies, and we are going to continue to pursue those. But we're going to be responsive to the needs of the people. I think we got so bogged down with dealing with the decay and decadence of 23 years of the PPP. In some instances, we may have lost touch, in some instances, with the people. And so you have a more engaged opposition, and we're going to be an even more engaged government. And as you have seen, we are on the ground. We are taking our arguments to the people. We want to hear from them, and we want to their views must go forward on how they want this station to be managed. It doesn't belong to the PPP. It belongs to all of us. And the PPP is operating right now as though it belongs to a small cabal.
Yeah.
And that is why we see Ashley Singh coming back from Dubai and the Middle East, ready to languish. Well, not even languishing. He is big on a sabbatical of sort. You have Leslie Ramsamy, who has now come back after 5 years. You got Vincent Brassington, and all of these foreigners who have suddenly come back. Right? We have been on the ground here. We know the needs of the people. We were not defeated in the last elections of March 2020. We were cheated out of those elections. And that is why they've been fighting us with the elections petition in the court and succeeded in getting one of them nullified on a technicality. Now, if they are claiming that we rigged the elections, that was the petition to show convincingly that we rigged it. But we knew that it was going to show it was the PPP who conclusively and decisively rigged and over-rigged the March 2nd regional and general elections in this country. And so, on a daily basis, Norman, to answer your question, people of this country get to do a side-by-side comparison with what the AFC offered and what the PPP offered. Look at the police force. Look at civil society. Look at members of government. Look at a government minister who stood in the National Assembly and lied that she was not a dual citizen. The High Court said she was when she took the oath. She said in the National Assembly. You have a convict who is a minister of government. Kwame McCoy was convicted of a stop. He's a minister of government. And all kinds of other shady characters. It's a cabinet and a government of scamps and crooks. And we believe that the Guyanese people have seen enough. And that is why our message is resonating with them. And that is why we believe they're going to vote us back into government. Sure.
Well, I want my viewers to know, and I usually mean what I say, most, and you are really, I don't know how you do it, where you find that energy from to juggle all of that work in Parliament on different social media programs and with the family, taking care of the family and all of that. You seem to be like what I call an energizer bunny, and I'm serious, and I want the viewers to know that is factual and that you're very courageous too. You're very courageous,
but you see, Norman, I would say I get my energy from folks like you, because if we see you pressing forward outside of the dash, I mean, you could throw up your hand and say you're in the service of our Majesty, and you're not concerned with what is happening here. But we see you out there. Shouldn't I go out and also fight if I'm on the ground here and seeing all the atrocities? And when you hear on a daily basis the plight of people, oh God, right? I am motivated and inspired by the Solomon injunction in the scriptures that we must speak for those who cannot speak, defend the poor, do righteously. And so that is encouragement, and that is my motivation. When you see and you hear the struggle of the people of this country, you have no other inclination than to step forward and try to be of service to them in any little way.
Wonderful. And you are continuing, you're continuing in that vein. I know that you're going to my hometown, Linden. That's my place. And
Well, Norman,
I love
incidentally,
I love Linden. I love Guyana, and I love Linden. And we continue to fight to ensure that things happen for that community, for that town, and for the entire country. So you're going to Linden. Tell us a little bit about why you're going and what is the message. But I wanted you to address this too. There's been a situation where the PPP, through some of its operatives, have gone into Linden and without any respect for the people of Linden, decided to refurbish a facility, a sporting facility that belonged to the community, that belonged to the people, and they went into it without any consultation or anything, and decided to start breaking it down and saying that they're going to build a state of the art facility and so on, and then one of the operative of the PPP stood up and said that all Lindeners are visionless, and that kinds of stuff. And this is the attitude of the PPP. So I hope you would be able to say something briefly here, and that to deal with that when you go to Linden in terms of how Linden should respond to people who are disrespectful to the community, and that the community should not be bullied by the PPP, and also that the PPP must not make African Guyanese and opposition members in general, not only African Guyanese, but opposition members in general, that must not make them believe that people from those constituencies that are not supporting the PPP, that they must be, they must put on a public display of gratitude when the PPP would have offered them something. And that is what is happening. People have to come out and actually declare their allegiance to the PPP, even though they don't have it, for the PPP to say, you know what, we're going to provide some lands there, we're going to provide some lands there. So you were going to Linden.
Close.
You're going to Linden, that's you there, and it's Saturday, February the 6th at Blueberry Hill Community Center, and that is 9:30 a.m. That's quite early. Tell us a little about it.
Norman, we are going to be there all day. Norman, we're going to be there all day. And it's a number of MPs who are going, but that's a specific area that I am going to be in. So Londoners can look forward to having an MP in their community. We're going to Aichoni, Kokwani, you name it, all the areas there in Region 10. But I'm going to be specifically in Blueberry Hill. Incidentally, Norman, you and I are both Lindeners. I left Linden as a child around age 3.
Are you a Lindener?
I was born at the
the late Dexter Duncan is your relative? Was your relative?
Not that I know of, but I want you to know it's because we have the Linden blood flowing in our veins. We're both fighters. And so I'm happy that I am associated with the Sharma Solomons of this world and the Vanessa Kissoon of this world.
Wonderful.
Can anything go wrong from Linden, Norman? We've answered the question.
Sherod Duncan, it has been a pleasure. It has been a pleasure having you on this program. And as I said, I can feel the goose pimples, the energy that you exude, and with 10 of you, I think that we're in good stead. The country's in good stead, and we may be able very well to return to continue the good work that the coalition was doing. I want to thank you very much for being on this program, and maybe sometime soon again you will be invited to tell us more great things. Thank you very much.
Norman, thank you as well for having me. It's been my privilege. Thank you.
Have a good evening.